the paranormal. I have believed in ghosts and the paranormal my entire life. One of the reasons is that I am very religious and that I believe that the spirit doesn't die. I am not afraid of ghosts since I believe that they mean no harm. But there is one thing I am afraid of: poltergeists. I am going to tell you about my encounters of poltergeists and ghosts throughout my life. It began when I was 5 years old. I lived in Uppsala, which is a city in Sweden north of Stockholm. We lived in an apartment, if you were wondering. Every Friday, Saturday and Sunday my parents would let me sleep in the living room on a mattress, since I loved being in the living room and I slept better on a mattress for some reason. One Saturday night I woke up about 3 a.m. I looked at the clock we had in the living room. After a minute I see a figure levitating into my room. I used to share a room with my big brother. It scared me. It might have been my mind playing tricks, since I was only 5 years old. But what made it so real was that it stopped and looked at me for a brief moment. If I would describe the figure, it would be a typical ghost. White clothes, transparent, etc. Though that wasn't the most scary thing about it. It was its eyes, the cold eyes. They looked through my soul, like it wanted something from me, or as if it was mad at me. Now, you may be wondering, how can I remember something like that? It was the eyes. I will never forget them. About 2 years later, when I was 7, we moved to southern Sweden, to a small town outside the city of Malmö. It was a very nice house, a typical townhouse, with a small garden, 2 floors, etc. When we moved, I started having problems with my sleep. I always woke up in the middle of the night crying. One day my dad heard me and came into my room and asked me, "What's wrong?" "It's watching me," I said. He didn't quite understand me and thought it was just my imagination and told me to go to sleep. But I couldn't. It felt like something was in the corner. It was cold in the middle of the summer in my room every night. I could easily see through the dark, and every time I woke up, there was some kind of shadow in the corner of my room. Every night, I would sneak into my parents' room and sleep there, since I felt I was safe there. I didn't understand any of these things. When I grew older, I started using the computer more. One day I googled my town and found witches used to be executed here. This is not some imaginary shit, it is actually true. I also found that in the middle of the 1800s, a boy was brutally murdered on my block, and the man hid the body in the attic. The man was convicted of murder and was executed. This might explain my next encounter. One day I woke up 4 a.m. I put on the TV and started watching the bad shows, which show up early in the day. Suddenly the door slammed up violently. I closed it thinking it was just the air. But after trying to fall asleep, something didn't let me. I started thinking about the door, and I eventually went downstairs and watched TV there instead. Suddenly something in the corner of my eye catches my attention. I look and see a boy. He was a typical Swedish boy. Blonde hair, a little bowl haircut. That was more popular in the old days in Sweden. But his clothes were ragged and ripped. He was a typical Swedish boy. Blonde hair, a little bowl haircut. That was more popular in the old days in Sweden. But his clothes were ragged and ripped. There was blood, and in the rips of his clothes you could clearly see cut wounds. He had a very large cut in his throat, which indicated someone cut his throat, but he was transparent, enough to see through, but also enough to see his clothes. He had a very mad look, and the same eyes I saw when I was 5 years old. After looking at him for a couple of seconds, he turned around and walked up the stairs and disappeared. I was shocked, but didn't follow since I wasn't that stupid. This isn't one of those typical ghost stories where they follow and encounter some scary shit. No, I just didn't want to be affiliated with any paranormal crap. I can barely sleep already. After that encounter, I would still see him in the corner of my eye, but as soon as I looked at him, he disappeared. One day, I helped my mum clean the attic. We found some boxes which were left over from the other family who lived here. There were just some old books, but when I picked up a box, I found a sharp object under it. It looked like an old shave blade, or whatever it's called. It had some brown spots. They looked sort of brown reddish. I didn't think it had anything to do with the encounter of the boy at the time. But the next few days I started thinking about it and believed it had some sort of connection. I asked my mum what she did with the boxes. She said she had thrown everything away except the books. So it was too late. I've always woken up in the middle of the night because of the sounds of footsteps from the attic. I believe in science, but I also believe in God and ghosts. So I thought it was either mice or a ghost. When I was a kid, I loved Lego. When I grew older, I started playing with them less and less, and eventually stopped. One day when I was 13, I looked through my old boxes of Legos. In them, I found something very odd, an old Bible. Since I am not Christian, and nobody in my family is, it wasn't mine. I looked through it and found the word death in one of the pages, written in red. I didn't really care and put it back, but after I found the Bible, some very odd things started happening. One day I was looking through my Legos again. My boxes are contained under my bed inside a wardrobe thingy. I closed the wardrobe thingy and went out of my room. When I came back, they were open. It was very odd. I didn't think of poltergeists at the time, but when I went to sleep, I started thinking about it. I looked at the corner which the shadow used to be at, but nothing was there. I looked at my frame on my wall, and what I saw was an outline of a figure. I couldn't see the figure, so it was all black, but it looked like it looked at me. Have you ever felt a very bizarre feeling, like if something or someone is watching you? That's what I felt. One day I turned on the light. and there was just a picture of my country's flag. No figure, but as soon as I turned off the light, it returned to the figure shape, and the bizarre feeling returned. I whispered, "What do you want from me?" I didn't expect an answer, and I didn't get one either. One night I woke up because of the TV. It was on and the volume was very loud. Luckily, nobody from my family woke up. I looked under me, so the remote wasn't under me, and didn't turn on because of that. It was on the table in my room, so it would be impossible for me to have turned it on. I also started having very creepy nightmares. I remember one. I was in a forest. I know, typical ghost story nightmare. I see a black-haired woman walking towards me. I raised my hands and start fighting it off, and so far I was winning. But then I started running, and then I stopped. I couldn't move, and she got closer, faster and faster. Eventually she was about half a meter away, and she stopped. She was smiling manically, and she opened her mouth, and then she attacked me in a flash, like a snake, and I woke up. I started having very similar nightmares, with me fighting something off, then being frozen, etc. I remember the most terrifying one. I was a Swedish boy playing hide and seek with a friend, and I'm going to hide. I find a very good spot in a bush. Might seem like a bad spot, but it was a very compact forest and hard to find details. I was giggling and thinking he will never find me. Suddenly, someone grabs me by the shoulder and holds his hands in front of my mouth. The man was blonde with short hair, very muscular and tall. He could have easily beat me to death. I couldn't scream, not make a sound. He drags me to a cottage close by. He binds me to a wooden beam in his house, and then takes a shaving blade and starts to torture me by cutting me in the arm, chest, legs, stomach, etc. And I couldn't make a sound. I couldn't find an exact picture of the man in my dreams. This was the best I found. I wanted to, but I couldn't. You guys have probably had dreams where you couldn't make a sound. The dream ends with him slitting my throat with the blade, and I wake up. I fall asleep again, and when I woke up, I had wounds on my arm. Not like cutting wounds, but I had bruises, and places on my arms were red. They were all the spots the man had cut me in my dream, though I didn't have anything on my throat. I started thinking about the dream, and then I started thinking about the boy in the stairs, with the cut throat, the cut wounds and ripped clothes. It scared me, and to this point, I was sure it wasn't a coincidence. Maybe the boy wanted me to know what happened. This is where my story ends. Yes, it is a very bad ending, but this is where it ends. I am now 23 years old and haven't had many encounters since that dream. I still have bad dreams and wake up with red spots and bruises, but nothing else. I think that was what the boy wanted. He wanted someone to know. He can rest in peace. Well, once again, this is where it all ends. It is now up to you to believe in what I have shared or not. I wanted to share my extraordinary experience to give you guys chills and take it off my shoulders by sharing. Thank you for reading. And that's it for tonight, my little hellhounds. Thanks for listening. If you have any scary stories, then submit them to Reddit r/homeofscares and follow me on Twitter at homeofscares. Don't forget to subscribe and click the like button and click the bell icon so you get notified every time I upload. Now, good night, my little hellhounds.